I'm Milton Metz from WHS for Bywords, our continuing series of interviews with interesting Kentuckians. Today, my guest is Grady Nutt. Grady Nutt is a man of many parts whom I've known personally and professionally for many years, and he does so many things so well. But primarily, he's an ordained minister who turned funny. Now, I don't mean strange in any way, but humorous. Grady, members of the cloth don't often combine, I think they use humor in their sermons, but they don't become great comics. I know maybe a rabbi who went onto the stage, but other than that, Catholics, ayatollahs are not known for jokes.
No.
Baptist ministers, of which you are one, are not. You seem to have combined very happily in your career the ability to make people think and feel better about themselves and life and their spiritual life, and at the same time to induce great gales of laughter. I think that's unique. When did you discover in your life that you could bring out laughter in people?
Oh, heavens, I guess as a very small child. I grew up in a funny family, and the only way to get in a word edgeways was to get in a funny one, because those were the kind flying at my house. And you spent a lot of your time with uncles and aunts and close kin folks who were teasers and playing pranks on you and giving you a new coat for Christmas with a mouse in the pocket.
You had a playful family?
Oh, yeah. Well, on my mother's side of the family, my grandfather, my grandmother, 3 uncles, all just Fruit Loops, you know, just funny people. My grandfather, for instance, would do little things like stop by a fruit market in the afternoons on his way home from the freight yards, where he was a switch engine operator for the Santa Fe Railroad. And he would buy the little tiny short green bananas, 6 or 8 at a time. And for about a week or so going to work, he would carry those little tiny green bananas, and his good friend on the line that worked with him always brought his lunch. My grandfather would slip out the good banana that the guy was bringing and put in these little green ones and wouldn't say anything. And this guy'd open up his lunch every day and start cussing his wife and throw those things across the yard, and my grandfather would just sit there and eat. Now, that's the spirit in which he teased. He was never harmful, and he always had fun with you. And he did things like giving you Christmas gift for my uncle one time. He gave him a 50-cent piece during the Depression that was friction taped to a brick, put in a box, wrapped, put in a box and wrapped, and put it under the tree 2 weeks early, and drove my uncle crazy. And he ripped it open, and there was his gift. And J.C. told me, my uncle told me later, he said, I can remember every gift my father ever gave me, because he gave them with spontaneity and fun. Now, we would sit at the table, and I listened to them tell these wild, exotic stories about growing up on farms and playing tricks on each other in the farms and dating in wagons and buggies and all that sort of stuff. And the only way to get into that was to tell about the funny things that happened when I played tricks at school and so forth. But while the other kids went out to play ball, I stayed in the dining room and listened to my grandfather and my uncles and my dad and everybody else tell stories. So storytelling and fun, I can never remember when I wasn't doing that.
Well, then dinner time must have been a great joyous occasion in your homes.
Yeah.
I mean, some families, you know, the most you hear is, please pass the butter, I'll have some salt.
Well,
and that's it.
And we were crazy moments, like when I got in high school, Mother fixed a stew for lunch one day, and for dessert we had those great big plums that you bought in a half-gallon can, industrial style. And she would dip up those big old purple plums with the hide still on them, and you get the seed out. Well, I cleaned up the dishes that day and had scraped all the residue of stew and plum seeds and everything into one bowl. And as was my custom, if it was something that you had to carry to the alley to dump out in the trash can or something, I'd wait and do it later and leave it sitting on the counter. Mother came in and thought it was a bowl of stew that somebody had not touched for lunch, dumped it back in the pot and put it in the refrigerator. So about 3 days later, we had stew again, and everybody had the blessing and said, thank God for lunch, and hit plum seeds all through the stew. So we have kidded Mother for years about her fine plum seed stew, you know, that kind of thing. And those kind of things happen around the table all the time.
You know,
so, you know, that was the kind of fun.
you have written a number of articles, some on commission from corporations with an inspirational note, and you've written some popularized versions of biblical quotations, many of them amusing, all instructive. I particularly like your autobiographical book, The Best of Anything You've Done. So far, so good.
Thank you.
Because it seems that I'm talking to you, which I enjoy very much. And when you read a book, but you seem to have a propensity for having gathering around you family and friends who have two things in common. One is often have strange names. You know people with funny names, Grady.
I do.
And the other one, to whom strange, quirky things happen, which are very funny in the retelling.
Oh, yeah. And I don't hunt those people up. They just sort of happen in my life. And one of my favorite kinds of characters is a guy who was here in the seminary several years ago. I attended the Southern Baptist Seminary here in Louisville, and after I graduated, worked on the staff for 5 years in public relations. We had a student from Birmingham who came here, graduated, and now works as a chaplain at a state mental hospital back in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, whose name is Grant Urquhart. And it's a good old German name, but it sounds interesting in English. U-R-Q-U-H-A-R-T, Urquhart. And I say now, people who remember names usually have some kind of word association that they put with that to help them hang on to a name. For instance, one of my sons has a college fraternity brother named Land, L-A-N-D, Pickle, Land Pickle.
That's what I mean.
And
nobody would believe.
No. And my first son had a friend here in Louisville he went to elementary school with named Rankin Maypother. Okay, now those kind of people. So, you know, how do you remember Maypother? How do you remember Land Pickle? Well, some of them just kind of hook on to you like Velcro, but he had this great name, Grant Urquhart. And so I say you can remember that if you'll just think of a golf ball hitting a bucket of oil, Urquhart. It's exactly what it would sound like. So Grant Urquhart married a girl from Richmond, Virginia, who was here in the seminary named Linda Enrufty, E-N-R-O-U-G-H-T-Y. So her name is Linda Enrufty Urquhart. So my mind started going barefoot, and I started thinking about the fact that so many young couples today, in an effort to retain individuality, are hyphenating their last names when they marry. You could have Smith Perkins hyphenated or something like that. So I thought if they got married and her name was hyphenated and his also, it'd be Linda Enrufty Urquhart, Grant Enrufty Urquhart, their kid couldn't play football because he'd have to hold his arms this way to get his name across his shoulders, you know. So you know, I just those kind of things.
Can we get that shot? Hold your hand up again like that. So you just spell your name from one elbow across the chest
have to go out
and the other
so
elbow.
you have Linda Enrufty Urquhart. That's kind of a special favorite, man. And incidentally, his nickname is Bunky, B-U-N-K-Y. So he was Bunky Urquhart, and you know, I don't make those up. Those just really happen. A woman in Houston who's been a longtime friend named Joni Maroney, M-E-R-O-N-E-Y, and she was Joni somebody, and she married Elmo Maroney, and her name is now Joni Maroney.
Right.
And the Rhymers, a girl in Mississippi who graduated from or Louisiana, who graduated from our Baptist seminary down there, whose name is Farabee Gasquet, F-E-R-E-B-E, Farabee Gasquet. And she may never marry because it just doesn't want to give it up, you know.
Grady, you have become a big staple, one of the stars of Hee Haw. You started off with a short period of time. They increased your time.
Right.
You're now into your third season, I believe. With
Second
them.
season.
Yeah, you'll be into the third
In the
when
fall.
they pick up your option.
That's right. Well, I laid it down.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Hoping they'd find it.
But you seem to have found a great place for the material that you do and a great home. And this is perhaps the most widely syndicated show of its kind in national television. I would think it's a very happy wedding of talents for you.
Yeah, it really is. And what's been so interesting all the way along is that people have not seen in me somebody that could play a part as much as they've seen in me somebody who could be himself. I'm essentially a self-generating type person. I know a lot of people and have met many of them, say for instance with Hee Haw, who are very well known for their comedy work, but who cannot think up hello if it isn't on a cue card, you know, and who have to look on their driver's license to remember their own names. I mean, they just don't generate a lot of it. And I find it all the time. It's almost a failure to me daily if I don't find something funny. I was in Fort Myers, Florida, Sunday a week ago, saw a septic tank cleaning truck on an emergency run, evidently on Sunday. Guy just seriously driving. And I got amused. And then when he went by, I saw on the back of his truck, a good flush is better than a full house. You see? And I'm fighting for a pencil because I never want to forget that kind of moment. So
you use material like that, right?
Absolutely. And to me, it's just always so much funnier if that sort of thing really does occur. Well, I'm always watching. My antenna is always up for the unusual and the bizarre and the absurd. The phone calls where somebody calls you up, and I got a call here in Louisville several years ago, and the lady says, "Charlie?" And I said, "No, this is Grady Nutt." And she said, "Charlie?"
Cut that out.
I said, "Lady, this is Grady Nutt." I'm sorry. She said, Charlie just snapped at me. I said, ma'am, you've got an 895. And she said, I know what number I dialed. And I said, well, I don't know what you dialed, but you got the Nutt House. Well, there was this real long pause. And so I said, look, have you still got your phone book handy? And she said, yeah. And I said, okay, just a minute. So I got mine and looked up my number and got the page. I said, okay, if you look in white pages, page 465. Charlie, look, won't take you but a second. Just want to make my point. And you could hear her just exasperated, ripping through the pages. You know. And finally, I said, you got it? Yes. I said, now read the second name in the middle column on 465. She goes, Grady Nutt. You could just see her eyebrows on the phone. Nutt. 202. Oh, God. Just hung up in my ear. And I just stood there in the hall and just screamed.
That was very patient of you, I think.
Well, I was a tickle because I knew when she finally realized that she did have somebody named Nutt on the telephone who was going to drive her wild. Now, I don't forget those things. And that's the kind of stuff that the folks at Hee Haw let me bring with me. You'd be interested in this. I think that they have never written a line for me, have never suggested a line to me. Our deal is that they give me 90 seconds to 2 minutes to play with. And they
no cue cards.
No cue cards.
No script.
No script. I don't write anything out ahead of time. I never practice anything ahead of time to see that it'll fit the time. I never see a clock. They never give me 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I can sit there and hit probably 105 seconds on the button without thinking about it almost every time. And I never practice a story, and all I know is I've written out 14 little deals for them. Number one would say be Odell milking his cow.
That's
and
it.
I walk in on him at the barn. Okay, and that's all. And so the guy over here with a headset on gets the word from the control room that they're ready to roll, and he walks over and says, okay, and I say, okay, Odell milk, okay, got that. So he backs up.
Now, do they label it?
Well, they have it on the sheet there, Odell's milking his cow. And so then the guy counts down 5, 4, and then everybody says, ha, ha, ha. They come in laughing.
All right, listen, you've tell us about Odell then.
Okay.
That is a story, right?
Well, yeah, Odell sitting out in the barn one day milking, and Odell Smith at Grafenberg, where I used to be pastor, and I roamed in out there on him all the time, and just loved to go by the house, and I'd occasionally help him milk, and he's down there putting those milkers in place and hauling the milk in and dumping the warm stuff and the steam coming out as it's cooling, and I was walking around in the barn with him, and cows just running. And so Odell sat down on his stool, and he put this stuff in place and everything, and he looks around the rear end of this Holstein at me. And he said, hey, Grady, and I said, what is it? And called him Odell all the time. I said, what is it, Odell? He said, tell me why it is God always calls a Baptist preacher to a better paying church. And I said, Odell, it is just his will. He said, I thought so. You know, he just went right on milking. Well, you know, and so I embellished that around to say, I start into it by saying, you know, the Baptists have a much different way for getting pastors than the Methodists or other groups, let's say. Some people, like the superintendent of missions or the bishop or somebody sends a guy to you whether you want him or not. You know, you just got Brother Hawkins for 4 years.
Right.
Well, the Baptists have a much more biblical and spiritual way to approach it. We have a pulpit committee that goes out, and we search from church to church until we find just the right person to come to our church. Then our committee starts, as we say, dealing with him and offering him more and more money till God finally leads him to us. Yeah, so I say that, and I say, and that's like my friend Odell said to me one time. So those are the kind of stories I just sit and spin off.
Now, I notice you have sort of an impromptu audience of members of the cast of Hee Haw, who are made up of whom? Who are the characters?
Well, generally we have Jimmy Riddle and Jackie Phelps. These are two guys that Eve and Ooh follow.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, those two guys. And we have Kenny Price, who's from up here at Florence, Kentucky, Covington. Usually Archie Campbell's always in the set. Gaylord Sartain, who is the cook in the truck stop with Lulu, and he's Maynard, Jimmy at the Gordy, who is the funniest human being I've ever been around. And then this last time, Roy Acuff decided he wanted to sit in with us, so he put on some bib overalls and sat just about like where you are right there. And the most fun I've ever had in my life telling stories was sitting there telling stories to these guys and watching Roy Acuff just laugh and laugh. He killed 3 Kleenex just soggy dead right there on the platform.
One of the classic persons.
Oh, and let's see, then Gordy Tapp, who is
very funny,
yes. You know, he's at the ironing board with Laverne when she's ironing. Well, Gordy, and those are usually the guys around me. Then the cameras are all set up like they'd be here, and people stand in around the cameras and just wad up, and you've got wives and stage hands.
You got
and
the laughter coming.
Yeah, and so we don't really have a set audience like you would in most situations, because we have to stop and start so much with the cue cards that if you can't keep the audience quiet, you can't really get it done. But it's absolutely incredible.
You have been very successful in your career as a minister, and then you do many speeches to conventions, after dinner talks, inspirational meetings all over the country, some overseas. You now are on Hee Haw. You've written a new album called
All Day Singing and Dinner on the Ground.
Dinner on the Ground. You sing on it, you produce that. You have your publications and this most recent book, of which I'm very fond and very proud of.
Thank you.
And now something very exciting, even on a bigger level, has happened to you. As we play this back on this recorded interview that we did just a short time ago and played back at this time, you are in Hollywood because NBC has shown profound interest and forwarded a great deal of money to develop a pilot based on your kind of humor, your kind of life, and your character with you in the lead role called, at this point, Reverend Grady.
Reverend Grady, yeah.
What is what's the genesis of this about to be a national entry?
Well, the track record of it is that the production company that does Hee Haw is called Young Street Productions, and there are 3 men who are the owners of Young Street Productions. Its primary focus is Hee Haw, and each of these 3 people produces programs in other directions all on his own, which he is responsible for developing and funding out of his own stuff. John Aylesworth is the man who works most closely with Hee Haw of all the people. He is a writer, and John and 2 of the other writers on the show, Barry Silver and Barry Edelman, we call them the Berries, just refer to them as the Berries, and I thought that was kind of fun, Nuts and the Berries getting together and making a Sunday program. But anyway, we have this this idea that John came up with all on his own one Thursday with his 2 writers. It hit him, what a neat situation to create a small community church where Grady could be the pastor and have these zany, funny people like he's always picking up on, and have him be pastor of a church and make a situation comedy out of that.
With you in the lead.
With me in the lead role. And just build it around my personality. And so he put the ideas together, and they wrote those up, storylines that might be expanded into full-blown scripts, and they called NBC on Friday and made an appointment to come out there Monday. They went out on Monday and met with Saul Ilson and Perry Lafferty, who are employed by Fred Silverman right now to help completely redirect NBC's thinking about programming. So we got out there, they looked over all the stuff and said, we'll get right back to you, it looks terrific. They called him back right after lunch Tuesday and gave him the full funding to develop the pilot. This is between Thursday and Tuesday.
Right.
And he called us on Tuesday afternoon to tell me that it was done, the pilot was to be developed, and I don't know anything about this. It's already been approved by NBC, and I've never even heard about it. So I fly out there Thursday night, and I met with him Friday morning, and we developed 4 of the storylines into pretty full, fleshed-out ideas that could be put into scripts. Went to NBC after lunch and sat down with Saul Ilson and his staff, and we dealt with the pilot idea, got that idea approved as the best one to go with.
Just talking it over.
Right. Then they wrote the script in full, sent it to me, and the interesting thing is, they need my input on what ministers do and what goes on in church, which gives me the most incredible chance I get to play the lead role in a story I'm helping to write.
And be the technical advisor.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk to these Hollywood people, is it a good business talk, or is it, well, Grady, baby, we're going to do it this way?
No, I have an idea, you get back what you deal out. If I deal with you comfortably and easily, and I just tell you, I say, boy, I'm an amateur at this, I can do it, but you're dealing with somebody who doesn't know the inside lingo.
Right.
So I don't know how to dress when I come to an office, let's say. I come in a suit and tie, and they're all wearing blue jeans and all this. So next time I come in blue jeans, so I learn slowly, but I learn. And that kind of wheeler-dealer talk did not go on in the least. And they like who I am and what I'm up to, and they're very encouraging and supportive, and they love the ideas, and they cheer us on. So they wanted me to come back, and we went through scripting about 3 or 4 times and got ideas back and forth, and they got it all filled out. I love the script for the pilot. So I went out last week and spent Wednesday and Thursday with them, and or Tuesday and Wednesday, and we did the casting for the additional parts. Well, I got to read with the other people that are going to be in the major recurring roles.
And, you mean there's already dialogue created?
Yeah. Oh, we've already got the script finished. Now we have the cast done, and as we're as this is being aired, we will probably have already finished the first round of taping for the pilot in front of a live audience. It'll be a situation comedy, and I will have a wife who will be Eleanor Donahue, who was the older daughter in Father Knows Best,
right.
and she was one of Andy Griffith's sweethearts along the way.
Oh, yes.
She is a dear gal. Well, here's my wife named Eleanor, and I have a woman named Eleanor playing
right.
her part in the play. I have a daughter who'll be 16. I have a feisty old senior adult lady who is just funny as the devil, you know, and she will, and with all the dignity going on Sunday morning with people greeting the minister as they come in to worship, she leans up and whispers something in your ear, and you're going, and she walks on with the look of a saint, but has just wiped you out at the door with some comment of hers.
Oh, she's a funny person.
Oh, yeah,
not,
funny and just crazy.
But in the congregation.
Oh, yeah, but in the congregation.
Who is that character?
Don't know yet. There were 2 people
right.
up for that, and I haven't heard exactly what they've done. Then I've got a next-door neighbor who is a golf hat wearing, pot-bellied, beer-drinking, carouser, just a crazy, funny, loopy guy who turns out to be probably my best buddy. And people cannot understand why the minister of the church gets along so well with this absolute reprobate who will not show up. And he and I dig each other. He walks by my study window and rattles his beer can as he goes by, and I shake my Diet 7-Up at him. And, you know, little things like that, just constantly zinging and digging, but a real sense of warmth between them. Then I have an associate pastor who is sort of Barney Fife to my Andy Griffith. He's going to be the well-educated, very sophisticated, deeply serious graduate of the seminary who is working with me as his first job out. And he can't understand why I hang so loose and show up to prepare sermons wearing a football shirt and a baseball cap. And he is always in his suit and tie, probably in the shower.
Now,
and, you know, so I've got to deal with him, church secretary who's constantly zinging him, and that's our cast.
if all goes well, I understand there is a high mortality on pilots, even the best of them.
Right.
That it is, if you'll forgive the expression, a bit of a crapshoot.
All right.
But if all goes well, the Reverend Grady will air what, for the summer season or fall of '81?
At this point, I think the probable best route is that it'll appear in the fall as a regular weekly half-hour situation comedy. There is an outside chance that they will have us at least on standby with scripts written and developed, so that if something that's currently coming out in the late season for NBC should fall by the wayside, they might pick us up in the late spring and let us run 5 or 6 shows through before summer, then pick up in the fall with a little bit of a track record behind us and give us a little extra impetus for the fall.
If you turn out to be a smash, such as MASH,
yes.
or the Mary Tyler Moore Show, could you be comfortable, Grady, as a millionaire?
Well, I have been. No.
Again, I mean.
Again. No, I could be happy with that kind of success. I'm very much like my first son, Perry, who doesn't necessarily need a fortune to be happy, but the income and success in his craft is kind of the way he keeps score on how he's growing. And the income is really never a factor to me very much. I always have enough, and sometimes I have to scrap to be sure that that's true. But I'm not foolish with my money.
Do you have any indulgences? I know you go in for exotic coffee blends.
Yeah,
and
well, coffee is one of them, and I'm a photography freak, and I have quite an investment in photography and gear and darkroom and all that kind of stuff.
And you like nice clothes too, I've noticed.
I do.
And you're and
that isn't. I guess I do have a lot of indulgences. I hadn't thought about that.
But they always seem to be socially acceptable.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Even the coffee is socially acceptable, as you well know.
Yes, you always bring.
No, you know, it's just I have a comfortable living, and I'm self-employed or self-unemployed, and the beautiful thing about this television program is that, in a sense, I'm helping to create something that I do most comfortably, rather than having to go out and read a script and act a part. Right. We got into reading the other day, and I found myself with one person reading the role of my wife, who would be rather sophisticated, but a fine reader with a good sense of timing. And I would catch myself reading in a more sophisticated kind of way. Then I'd catch one who was sort of a little feisty fireball when I'm reading feisty fireball. And I have the ability to kind of bounce around and move flexibly, and that's sort of the pattern of my life. And this program would be one, like the Hee Haw set. It took me 2 or 3 times around to finally get comfortable enough in the format, since I usually take 20 minutes to tell one of those little minute-and-a-half episodes.
You made passing mention of the makeup of your family. They are who?
Well, I have my dear wife, Eleanor. We're in our 23rd year of marriage, 17 very happy ones, and 4 wretched ones back early.
You jest?
No, we nearly blew it after 4 years. Just, you know, and the main problem was I was so intent on being king of the mountain that I picked the mountain. You know, and I determined that I was going to run this operation, and wives are supposed to shut up and get in their place, and you're supposed to be ready when I say go. And until she finally learned to stand on her feet and give me thunder, we just never did make it. I am married to a very freed-up woman who doesn't mind telling me to take a leap, and she is on her own and very independent, a housewife who loves it, and fun to live with. She is just a delight. We were having a rather raucous time before I left this morning with her teasing me as I was getting ready to leave. She's just, you know, fun. We have a great time together. My first son, Perry, is 22, and he lives in Dallas, and he is a gold and silver broker and is in business for himself, and calls frequently and regularly to keep us posted, and I do most of his romance counseling and all that kind of stuff. The last 2 nights we've talked 45 minutes each about very personal things, and I cannot believe that my son just brings that sort of stuff home and says, "Dad, let's talk." Or he can talk with Eleanor. It's immaterial. But whoever picks up the phone gets whatever he's got on the table at the moment. Right. Our son Toby is 20 and one of the funniest, most delightful people I've ever known in my life. He's a junior at the University of Mississippi, and we just spent Monday with him at Ole Miss at his fraternity house and took several of his friends out to dinner and just sat and laughed and carried on. And he is an incredibly agile mind in terms of creating electric language. He's a good writer. And I told him the other day, I said, "Toby, you keep taking creative writing courses because they come so easily and sweating it through business school. Has it ever occurred to you that maybe what you ought to be discovering is how well you write is some clue to where you ought to be headed instead of into business?" He said, "I know it, but he hates grammar, but he loves English, you know." So, but he is a funny kid, and we just have a delightful time. Good surpriser.
Grady?
Yes.
It's been a very pleasant conversation.
That's it?